Thank you.
We are back on the record at 11:05 a.m.
All right, Mr. Howell, you may proceed.
Thank you very much. So, Ms. Cuomo, I'm now going to back to board tab 33, and I'm going to be looking at pages 34 and 35. Really more at 35.
Yes.
Okay, so this is an email you wrote to Erica Rivera, right?
Yes.
And this was also leave for which you didn't seek pre-approval, isn't that right?
Yes.
And this was after you had already talked to Mr. Martin about how annual leave worked, correct?
I don't think so. I believe that I talked to him the same day.
Okay.
And then in our conversation, no, I'm sorry. I had two conversations with Mr. Martin. So there was one before about the one that we talked about right before the break, and then the other one, yes, regarding. So yes, I remember that.
Okay.
Yes, it was after my first conversation with Mr. Martin about LWOP, annual leave, and taking lunch time, walking through lunch.
Okay. And you did, in fact, appeal the AWOL determination to Mr. Bruce Chung and to Mr. Rod Goodson, correct?
Yes, and assisted their directors also of the case.
Okay. I'm moving right along in this board tab 33, so it's going to be pages 37 to 45. All right. If we go to page 38, that near towards the bottom of 38, that's an email that you sent to Mr. Chung, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. And nowhere in that email do you deny that you failed to request leave beforehand, do you?
No, I did not.
Okay. You also didn't provide an explanation to Mr. Martin for what your personal emergency was on July 17th. Isn't that right?
I did not elaborate on what my personal emergency was, but I did mention that I had a personal emergency.
Okay. And if we go up to his response on page 37 of board tab 33, it's his second paragraph. There's a sentence that starts finally. Do you see that?
Finally on 7/17?
Yes. He says, finally on 7/17, and again without prior notice and approval, you were 2 hours late to a personal emergency, due to a personal emergency, but did not provide anything to substantiate your claim of a personal emergency. So he noted that you didn't provide that explanation, correct? An elaboration, I believe, as you described it.
Yes, he did.
And you still didn't provide him that elaboration, correct?
No, I did not.
Okay. We go to pages 46 and 47 of board tab 33. I apologize. It's actually going to be 47 through 56. Are you on page 47, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. And 47, this is Mr. Goodson's denial of, this is the bottom of page 47, I apologize. This is Mr. Goodson's denial of of reversing the AWOL charge, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. You also never told Mr. Goodson what the personal emergency was either, did you?
I did not elaborate on that. No.
Okay. We go down. It's on page 48. Do you see where it's another email from you to Mr. Chung?
Yes.
And actually, I'm going to be going to page 49. It's towards the end of this email. It's about halfway down page 49, and it starts, even the 1 hour phone call.
Yes.
You say, even the 1 hour phone call discussing SBA matters shows a desire to learn and grow, and I am having a hard time believing that even that is considered being AWOL. Surely I thought it would be understandable that an attorney that has been doing pure data entry for 2 or 3 weeks, entering data on a spreadsheet, would feel the need to use one's mind and intellect, even if that means calling another office and request a leave to discuss work-related and SBA-related matters. Did I read that paragraph correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, so is it correct then that you thought it was within your purview to decide what tasks you wanted to complete?
No.
And you refer to the data entry, you refer to it as data entry. So once again, weren't you saying that the work was not, was beneath you as an attorney?
It was data entry.
I understand that. And were you contending here that it was beneath you as an attorney?
What I'm saying here is that it's understandable that somebody that has been doing data entry for a long time, that has been trained as an attorney, will find it mind-numbing to only do that for so long. That's all I'm saying here.
So you didn't think attorneys should ever have to do data entry, right?
I specifically stayed for 2 or 3 weeks entering data on a spreadsheet will feel the need to use both mind and intellect.
In other words, it's fair to say you wanted to do what you wanted to do, correct?
No, it's not fair to say that.
Okay. So moving forward, you have no direct evidence, do you, that Mr. Martin knew of your disclosure about rule changes to EIDL regulations, right?
No, like I said before, I tried to obtain that evidence through discovery. I wasn't able to get it. However, I have circumstantial evidence because as my supervisor, he also had access to my emails and MS Teams chat, and also as part of management, I believe that if somebody in the office management was concerned about whistleblower, that they will share that information with other people.
Okay, but you don't have any evidence, do you, that Mr. Martin actually knew about it? That's what I'm asking.
I do have evidence, circumstantial evidence, because of the way that I've been treated after I made the disclosures, and because of my performance plan, specifically saying that my supervisors or the managers had to evaluate my work by review. Our work as attorneys in the accounts department by reviewing communications with the borrowers and with with the staff at the office.
You don't have any evidence, do you, that Mr. Chung knew about those alleged disclosures either, correct?
That's pretty much this. Basically, I don't have any direct evidence, but I have circumstantial evidence based on the fact that being above my supervisors, if one of them was concerned about the whistleblower, they would probably share that information about people above.
I'll ask you the same thing about Mr. Goodson. You don't have any evidence that he knew about it, right?
I'm going to provide the same answer that I did for Mr. Sean.
And that's that you don't have direct evidence, but you have circumstantial evidence?
Yes. And based on the fact that I don't have any direct evidence because I wasn't able to obtain it through discovery, but because he's manager and because of the events that happened after I made the disclosures, I believe that he knew about.
So those are just events that you're connecting in your mind, right?
Those are events that I'm connecting based on the way things happened and on the things that happened and the way things happened and on the information that I have.
It's correct, though, isn't it, that you just suspect that all of those individuals knew about the disclosure. You don't actually know that they knew about it, right?
I believe that it's more than just suspicion. That the facts back my that the facts.
Very well. All right. So in about August of 2020, you transferred to Ms. Jessica McCall's team, isn't that right?
Yes.
That would have been on about August the 10th of 2020?
That was during my last week at the SBA, so it could have been, yes.
Somewhere around then? Fair
exactly.
Enough. It's correct, isn't it, that you only served on Ms. McCall's team for about 5 days, right?
Yes, 5 days 4 or 5 days, I believe.
Okay. And Ms. McCall was just a team lead too, right?
She was a team lead. I don't want to say just.
Well, she wasn't a supervisor, was she?
No, she was not a supervisor.
All right. And so my understanding is, based on your testimony, you allege that you engaged in whistleblowing when you asked about the agency's use of a particular version of IRS Form 4506T. That is the use of the March 2019 form instead of the June 2019 form, right?
Yes.
Okay. Can we look, please, at it's board tab 33. It's going to be page 59 of that.
Yes.
All right. And is this a conversation that you've seen before?
Yes. You provided during the discovery process.
This is the conversation in which you asked Ms. McCall the questions about Form 4506T, right?
Yes.
So it's correct, isn't it, as you read this conversation, you never specifically told her that there was anything wrong with using the March 2019 form, right?
I did. When I said there is a new transcript format that better protects taxpayer data, this new format partially masks personally identified information.
Well, my question is, you're just providing information there. You're not specifically telling her there's something wrong with the the March 2019 version, right?
Well, that information does state that there's something deficient with that other version of the form.
Okay. And it's correct, isn't it? Ms. McCall didn't criticize you for asking that question?
No, she did not.
In fact, she also agreed to forward the questions to management, didn't she?
She did.
And the quote that you send to Ms. McCall, did that come from the IRS website?
Yes, I said this is an excerpt from the IRS website, and I copied and pasted.
Are you aware that the IRS requested the SBA use that version?
Which version?
The March 2019 version.
If I'm aware that the SBA, that the IRS recommended that the SBA use that older version.
Yes, are you aware of that?
No, and the agency, I don't know if the agency has provided any documents showing that the IRS.
Okay. In this conversation, it's correct, isn't it, that Ms. McCall agreed to forward your questions to management?
Yes, she did.
Okay. So moving along in board tab 33, I'm going to be going to pages 61 to 65. Now you'll see eventually these emails get forwarded to you on page 61. But for a moment, I'm going down to page 63. Please let me know when you're there.
Yes, please.
Are you on page 63 of board tab 33?
Yes.
Okay. You see it's an email from Jessica McCall to Jennifer Davis on August 14th at 12:16 p.m.
12:16 p.m. Yes.
And those are in that email then, and I realize you're not copied on it, Ms. McCall forwards the questions that you asked her to Jennifer Davis, correct?
Yes.
And Jennifer Davis was in management, wasn't she?
Jennifer Davis, as I understood it, was somebody that was either above the team leads and then below the supervisors. So someone.
Okay. But Ms. McCall forwards your questions verbatim, doesn't she?
Yes, I believe she did. Yes, it looks like she did.
And then as we scroll up through the emails, we go to page 62. Several people weigh in on the answer, don't they, including Jennifer Davis and Chris Martin?
Yes.
Okay. And in those emails, nobody criticizes you for asking those questions, do they?
Not in those emails, no.
Okay, and that's my question. Not in those emails, nobody criticizes you, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that includes Mr. Martin then, right?
Yes.
So as we go to page 61, Ms. McCall then provided you all of these emails, correct?
Yes.
And it answered your question about which version of the form to use, didn't it?
Yes.
And you just didn't like the explanation that it gave, correct?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the...
You did not agree with the explanation it gave. Is that true?
It's not that I didn't agree. The explanation didn't answer. The discussions that were forwarded to me didn't answer all my questions, or they didn't answer them truly.
All right, I'll put it different then. You didn't find the answer to be sufficient, correct?
Yes, I found the answers to be insufficient. And also, yes, not good management because they didn't really seem to address the P2 issue.
And P2, what do you mean by a P2 issue?
I'm sorry, privately identifiable information.
So PII.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, PII. Sorry about that.
Just wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding something. And Ms. McCall told you that loan processing would handle any issues about fraud, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
Okay. You never told anyone at the agency that the use of the March 2019 form violated a law, did you?
Since I did not use that specific language, but because Mrs. McCall, Mr. Martin, at least in the email chain were attorneys, I believe that they understood that there was a law there that was being violated.
And what law did you allege that it violated?
Privacy Act.
The Privacy Act. But can you state how it violated the Privacy Act?
By exposing private information, the customer's private information when it should be protected, or it could be protected.
But you never specifically told anyone it violated the Privacy Act, right?
No, and I also believe that it violated just attorney ethics, and maybe even managerial ethics. So.
All right, you believe it violated attorney ethics. Did you tell anyone that it violated attorney ethics?
No, I believe that to become an attorney, you have to take an ethics class. So. Did
you cite a specific rule, such as from the ABA or the State Bar of Texas, that it violated?
No, but I believe that as attorneys, you have to take continuing education classes, and you basically, as attorneys and as people in management, they should know about those things.
Okay. If we're moving right along in board tab 33, it's going to be pages 67 to 70. I'm going to be looking specifically at the bottom of page 67 and the top of page 68.
Okay.
All right. And in this email, and you can take a moment to read it if you need, but you state in this email, don't you, to Ms. McCall, that you provided a borrower with both versions of the form. That is March 2019 and the June 2019 version, right?
Yes.
And you did that even though that you'd been told to use the March 2019 version, right?
Well, that included the March 2019 version.
But you also provided the June 2019 version, didn't you?
I did, but that was also while Mrs. McCall was consulting with management as to which form to use. So there wasn't too much clarity about which form to use. And I was hired as an attorney, so I used my best judgment to explain the difference to the applicant.
In other words, you took it upon yourself to provide him that option, right?
I believe that I was doing my duty as an attorney.
Even though you had been directed to use the March 2019 version?
Even though I had been directed originally to use the March 2019 version, but based on Mrs. McCall's answers after my inquiries, there was a question mark as to whether there was clarity on management's side as to which version to use.
But you nonetheless had to go back to the borrower and correct what you had stated, right?
I did, yes. After she confirmed that management did not wanted the March 19 version.
You've also alleged in this case, I believe you testified to it earlier, that while you resigned, the resignation was involuntary, right?
Yes.
In fact, I believe you testified earlier that it was due to trauma that you endured by the agency?
Yes, I believe that the events that happened while I was working at the agency, and also the last event of the 45 or 60 form, all those things played a role into my final decision.
But for example, you admitted earlier that for the various times that you were charged AWOL, you didn't have pre-approved leave, right?
For the various times that I was charged AWOL, no, I did not have pre-approved leave, but I believe that I'm following procedure based on this.
And you never did reveal the personal emergency was looking for another job, correct?
No, it was a personal emergency, and I did not want to elaborate on that because it was personal to me.
All right, let's look at board tab. This is 23 this time. It'll be pages 235 to 237. Okay, towards the bottom of 236 and on to 237. This is an email that you sent on Saturday, August 15, 2020, 12:59 p.m., correct?
Yes.
That's the email in which you resign, right?
Yes.
In that email, you never said that you were forced to resign, isn't that right?
No, I did not want to. No, because I just, at that time, I just want to put it all behind me. So
Okay.
I just want my commitment plan and my documents and move on to better life.
So you also thanked the agency for the opportunity to do the work, didn't you? In that
Yes, yes, and I did that because that's the standard. I believe that's how you should resign from a position.
email? Okay.
Try and be in good terms.
So you sent the email at 12:59 p.m., correct?
Yes,
And it was effective immediately then.
I believe I stated that it was.
Okay. And so there was no prior notice of your resignation.
No.
Okay. Now you testified earlier about your ethical duties as an attorney, didn't you?
I did.
Is it consistent with your ethical duties as an attorney to quit a job with no notice?
Well, it's just that before, even when I left the time that I left before, it was also the same day. And then management, supervisor at the PDC office, when I asked him whether it would be okay for me to leave that same day or whether they needed an advance notice, he told me that I didn't need one, and I can name that supervisor.
And who was that?
Way Madden. And that was when I resigned in 2018. So he said that there wasn't a need for one. He won't play negatively against me.
So if I'm hearing you right, based on what happened in 2018, you decided that's what should dictate your behavior in 2020.
I wasn't informed that there was a difference in rules and procedures.
Okay. I believe you've also alleged that the agency wouldn't provide you with the performance plan, right?
Yes.
But you don't know whether or not Mr. Martin ever forwarded those questions to HR. Is that right?
Would you repeat that question, please?
You don't. Do you know whether Mr. Martin ever forwarded your questions to HR or to the personnel department?
I believe that during discovery, the agency provided an email that Mr. Martin sent, I think it was on Sunday or Monday, to HR, asking if they had seen my resignation email.
Okay.
But for the whole year, when I called several people in HR, and when I called Mr. Martin and emailed everybody, nobody gave me an answer.
Okay. You've also alleged, haven't you, that the agency's post-employment restrictions retaliated against you? All right.
Yes.
Let's look at the same tab 23. It's going to be pages 139 through 148.
Yes.
Okay. So you're on page 139?
Yes.
All right. I'd like you to read. It's the first line of it, and it starts with 2. Please read 2 and who the 2 is to, please.
All SBA employees.
Okay, that says all SBA employees. And at the time you received this, immediately prior to receiving this, you had been an SBA employee, correct?
Yes.
And that line then doesn't exclude anyone who's an SBA employee, does it?
That line specifically says all, so...
So that would have included you, correct?
That would have included me normally, yes.
Okay. Now, I think we spoke earlier, and you acknowledge that you're in Cameroon and looking to start an NGO or a nonprofit?
Yes.
Okay, that's only been for a few months, hasn't it?
Yes.
But you also testified earlier today, didn't you, that you only became aware that you might be protected by the Whistleblower Protection Act in about July or August of this year?
Yes. Yes. That was yes. Mm-hmm.
Even though we saw earlier that you had passed whistleblower training in June of 2020.
Yes, and that's why I said that I didn't recall that training. I guess I must have just watched it, just thinking that it was something that happened to other people, so I didn't try to remember it, and I didn't store that information. Otherwise, if I knew about, if I remember that, if I knew about the rights of whistleblowers, I would have probably kept my file, my documents before leaving. I wouldn't have given them all to my supervisors when I left, because I would have had proof of certain things that happened.
And as we sit here today, you're not able to name anyone specifically that the agency treated more favorably than you, right?
I tried to obtain that information during discovery. I wasn't able to, but the information that I have right now is that I have never heard of, I've known of many people that have worked at the SBA in 2017 and 2018, and that never mentioned anything like this. And also when I left the SBA in 2018, I did not receive this document, this post-employment restriction document.
And so is it your testimony that because you didn't get this document in 2018, it was somehow inappropriate to give it to you in 2020?
It is my testimony that because I didn't receive it in 2018, and I've never heard of anybody that received it, that this document is probably being given to people depending on whether the agency actually wants to restrict their post-employment activities or not.
Isn't it possible that you just forgot you received it in 2018?
No, because I kept those emails because, for example, I have the performance ratings, the email conversations that I had with HR after I left the SBA in 2018. I still had it in my emails, and I was able to use that to submit to the EO office and to pull up my performance ratings and things like that. So if I had received something like that, it would have been in those emails, but it wasn't.
And did I hear you correctly that you had talked to other people who had not received these same restrictions?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, some people, nobody ever mentioned it because I believe that restrictions like saying that one cannot work for anybody that has received SBA loans for, I think it says a year or two. That is something significant enough that people would be talking about it if they had received anything like that, because that would significantly impact how things go after they leave the SBA.
Who are the people that you talked to?
No, what I'm saying is that I know a lot of people that worked at the SBA in 2017 and 2018 with me that never mentioned it.
And they were who?
There were people, attorneys that worked at the SBA.
Do they have names?
I mean, yeah, they do have names, but yeah, I don't wanna try and remember them now.
Did you actually ask those individuals, whoever they might have been, if they got this document?
I asked at least one person.
Who was the one person then?
She still works at the SBA now, and her name is her name escapes me.
Or you'll have to spell that. I couldn't.
Moelle. Her last name is Moelle. I forgot her first name. But she, for example, did not answer my question. So I don't know whether she received it or not. But what I'm saying is that generally, people did not, never mentioned it to me.
I believe I'm confused. You said she never answered the question?
Yes, I asked her whether she received it. She never told me. I don't know.
Okay, very well. I'm just looking through my notes, and ma'am, I think I've asked you all the questions I had. We got through that quicker than I expected, so thank you. So, Judge, I believe I'm done, and I believe it now goes back to Ms. Quimo.
All right, it does indeed. So Ms. Quimo, do you have any redirect that you'd like to offer to clarify questions you were asked by Mr. Howell?
Yes, Judge. I would like to speak on some things that, some questions that you asked me. I would like to clarify some things.
You may.
Okay, thank you. So the agency asked me, Mr. Howell, asked me whether the rule change regarding the EIDL loans was, whether I knew that it was retroactive. I believe that's what he said, and I would like to say that I did not believe the rule to be retroactive per se, but I believe that going forward, that the applicants that qualified for the loans had to know about the rule change, so that if they had applied before, that they could reapply and have their loans approved if they met all of the criteria. And also regarding the SOP, I believe that the SOP was violated by the fact that those applicants did not have that qualified under the rule change, did not have a valid opportunity to reapply, and that even in reconsideration, during the reconsideration process, that their applications were not approved under the rule change. When I believe the agency should have taken that, the fact that it had changed the rules itself into consideration. And regarding whether I made any direct disclosure to management, I would like to reiterate that I did make that indirect disclosures to management regarding the changes to the EIDL loans by making the disclosures to my team lead, and by doing so in writing, for example, even to my phone calls, which I believe were being monitored for performance review, and whether Mrs. Powam told anyone else, or whether anyone told anyone else. I don't have that information, but I believe that such pertinent information will have probably circulated amongst management. Regarding my sick leave, when I was told to call Mrs. Rivera, whether Mrs. Rivera didn't tell me specifically when to call her, but the fact that she contacted me more than once, more than twice. So my team lead, during the same day when she knew that I was out sick, and within a few hours and sometimes minutes, indicated that she wanted a quick response. So because she was my supervisor, I didn't want to be guessing as to whether that quick response would come the same day or the next day. So I went ahead and contacted her the same day just to make sure. As far as the interest in knowing whether she had any interest in knowing whether I will be at work, Mrs. Rivera did had an interest in knowing who will be at work, but because she knew that I was sick, recovering from an illness is not something that is predictable. So as a manager, she should know that. So there wasn't any way I could predict whether I would be able for sure to be at work the next day, even though I had indicated that I would probably be there. And also, it's true that we were going through a pandemic, and we still are. And she might have had an interest in knowing whether I had COVID-19 or not, but that information could have waited later in the day when I said that I would call her or contact her after I left the emergency room, or it could have waited even better the next day when hopefully I will feel better or hopefully I will be at work. Just because if I was really sick, then she would have known about it the next day anyway. And even if her motive was, say, I had died, say, of COVID-19, somebody, the SBA had my emergency contacts information, and she could have had access to that information that way. Then when the CFR, the rule that Mr. Howell pointed out that I mentioned in my brief, CFR 2009, Title 5, Volume 1, and I didn't write down the rest. When it says that the management can contact somebody that is sick after less than 3 days when the agency determines it's necessary. In my case, it wasn't necessary to do so because there wasn't anything urgent that the agency needed so badly that they had to contact me on that specific day when he knew that, when my supervisors knew that I was at the emergency room, and when my well-being should have been the priority. I wasn't the only person on the triage sent to the funding triage team, meaning the data entry team, but that doesn't mean that I wasn't retaliated against, just because I was part of a group of people. And I believe that I was still being retaliated against. As far as the annual leave, there was a customary during the course of this process, and even as I submitted the documents before, there was a custom at the SBA that annual leave would be approved after the fact. For instance, in 2017 and 2018, 3 separate times at least, I had absences of 2 absences of roughly 15 minutes, and 1 absence of roughly an hour. And all times, my supervisor, who was Mrs. Rivera, approved those requests after the fact. Actually the same day, without requesting any documentation, without requesting any more explanations than what I said, meaning that I was just late. And for the 1 hour absence, I just had that something had come up. So it's not that different from saying that I had a personal emergency. So there wasn't any indication that anything would be different this time around. And so that's why the AWOL being implemented at the end of everything, of the whole time period, was a surprise to me. And even regarding the phone calls, as I mentioned before, I started the phone calls specifically to talk about reconsideration for EIDL loan, which is something that touched directly with my work duties. And if the conversation veered after 15 minutes or so into something else, because I had planned on spending only less than 15 minutes. Actually, my email appointment with my colleague, I had only asked for a few minutes, so for 5 minutes or so. So I did not plan on being on the phone for an hour. And the only reason why I stayed on the phone for that long is because I believe that it was still acceptable because we were talking about SPA matters. So based on my time before the agency, we had phone calls, not with other, I had phone calls, not maybe not with other officers, but with other people in the office about general SBA matters without necessarily have to request time off. And as I was completing, as I was reading the SOP, that reading the SOP wasn't something that was required of me. At no time had any one of my supervisors or even team lead indicated that it was mandatory for me to read the SOP. But I took it upon myself to do so just to learn about what was going on at the agency. And also, many of the trainings that I completed were not required at all. They were completely optional, and I picked them based on whether I thought they would be interesting. And I was never told and I had to request annual leave, or that I would become AWOL if I did that, because some of them didn't touch at all on ODA matters or PDC matters. Some of them touch on management, for example, or general SPA loans, for example, which is really close to what I discussed with the other colleagues at the other office. Regarding my personal emergency, like I said before, I did not believe that it was necessary for me to elaborate on what was a personal emergency. It was a personal emergency to me because I had been working on the data entry team for several weeks, and by that time, I believe that if I had been hired to work as an attorney, my work duties didn't indicate at all that I would end up being data entry for a significant amount of time. And I believe that if that was all that the SBA believed that it could get out of me, or then maybe it was time to look for a job somewhere else. And as I said during my deposition, I indicated that it was an emergency to me because it was an emergency for me to leave the data entry task. So that's why it was an emergency. And then the job, the deadline to apply for that job was coming up, and I didn't want to miss. I wanted to maximize the opportunity that I had in front of me, and the job was within the federal government still. So that's why I took some time off to apply. Regarding the form 4506T, the SBA has now adopted a version of the form. Now, the ODA office now requires that applicants submit a version of that form that does protect PII data. Therefore, by doing that, it acknowledges that it's a better way to go about. It's a better version. It's a better. It acknowledges that when it required the March version of the form, it wasn't really the best decision that it could have taken at the time. So it sort of acknowledges that by requiring now that people provide a version of the form that protects P2 data, and also during the few days that the ODA office or the PDC office required that we request the March 4506T, the March version of the form 4506T. The SBA had issued warnings to applicants about about phishing emails related to the EIDL, specifically for the EIDL loans. So the SBA had a duty to comply with, basically to follow the leadership, the higher level leadership, and request a version of the form that better handled privately identifiable information, especially when months before in March or April 2020, the ODA office, those specific loans had a cyber attack. There was a cyber attack that shut down our office for almost a week. So based on that information, management should have made a better decision. And I believe that I've gone through my notes, and that's it for now.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Primo. So does that conclude your redirect testimony?
Yes.
All right, so Mr. Howell, do you have any recross?
I believe just a very few. Ms. Cuomo, I believe you were just testifying about phishing emails and how that led to your belief in the disclosure related to the IRS form, correct?
No, it didn't. Yes, the phishing emails. Yes, the emails from outside parties that were trying to infiltrate. Yes, the system. Yes.
What is it that a phishing email had to do with an IRS form, and which version should be used?
The phishing email, because we received those phishing emails to our SBA, emails, and also I believe we had at least one questionable attempt into our personal emails. But I believe that by people trying to fish into the SBA, our work emails, because we received that information, we received the documents, the forms that the employees, that the applicants will provide. Usually, it's often by email. Then, if somebody, for example, was able to reach through the SBA database, they will have access to that information because we received them sometimes by email, and those requests specifically were made by email. So even if they didn't have access to the specific form, say if the applicant submitted the form in a different way, those emails will have access to the applicant's email. I mean, those phishing people will have access to the applicant's email, and by doing that, will have access to the documents that they could be handling in those emails, including search forms.
Is it that you believed was going to access the SBA's emails? I'm not sure I follow.
Outside parties, malicious people.
And when, if ever, did you tell a supervisor that you believe the form, the version of the form would lead to phishing?
No, I did not believe that the version of the form would lead to phishing, but I believe that the version of the form exposed people's data to phishing scam, to people that could, to scammers, basically. Yes, that's what I mean.
And I believe you testified that you believe your communications were monitored by management.
Yes.
But you don't have any knowledge that actually happened, do you?
It specifically states so in my performance plan. So if management, if my supervisors actually perform their duties, they will have to have access to my emails and phone records. Because those performance plans specifically say, I'm sorry, that was the performance plan that applied to attorneys at the EDC specifically said that supervisors had to, that attorneys' work will be reviewed on things like their communication, written and verbal, and to phone with the customers and with and internally.
Okay, but as we sit here, you don't know of any specific manager who listened in on a phone conversation you had, do you?
Well, I wouldn't know what, when they go behind the scenes to do those things because I wasn't part of the management. And I did request an information during this call where I wasn't able to obtain it.
So then you have no evidence that it happened. Isn't that true?
I have evidence of my performance plan, of my performance rating, and then I have evidence of the same type of, in 2018 when I left and I received a review of my work, that included a review of my email communications and phone communications with everybody.
I think that's all my questions. Thank you, Ms.
All right, well, okay, thank you. All right, I believe that concludes then Ms. Quimo's testimony. So we will move on after a lunch break to the testimony of the next witness. And Ms. Quimo, is that Letitia Parham? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, we'll take a 30-minute lunch break. When we reconvene, Mr. Howell, if you will please have the next witness available to testify. Let's go off the record.
We are off the record at 12:01 p.m. We are back on the record at 12:36 p.m.
All right, we're back on the record with the next witness, Letitia Parham. Somehow during the break, my video camera went off, and so I am no longer appearing on the screen visible to the parties. We've clarified that everybody can still hear me clearly, but for the time being, there's no video service showing my face. The parties have indicated they have no objection to proceeding in that manner. Is that correct, Ms. Quimo?
Yes, it is.
And Mr. Howell?
That's correct.
All right, so we're going to proceed with the testimony of Ms. Parham. Ms. Parham, before you testify, I do need to swear you in. So if you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, ma'am. You may lower your hand. Thank you. So, Ms. Parham, you have been asked to provide testimony in the appeal of Sylviane Quimo versus the Small Business Administration. If an objection is raised to a question that you are asked during your testimony, please wait for me to rule on the objection, and then I will let you know whether or not to proceed with the response. In addition, please be sure to answer all the questions orally and keep your voice raised so that we can all hear your testimony and accurately capture it for the record. You're going to be asked questions in a couple of rounds. First, Ms. Quimo is going to ask you questions. Then the agency will have an opportunity to ask you questions through their representative, Ms. Heiser. Then Ms. Quimo will get a second opportunity, and then the agency will have a second opportunity, and then you'll be released from testifying here today. Before I turn it over to Ms. Quimo, would you please state and then spell your full name?
Letitia Parham, LATISHA PARHAM.
Are you currently employed by the Small Business Administration?
I am.
In what position?
Supervisory Attorney Advisor.
How long have you been a Supervisory Attorney Advisor for the SBA?
Since August of 2021.
And did you work for the SBA prior to August 2021?
Yes.
In what position?
I worked as a attorney advisor prior to supervisory attorney advisor, and prior to that as a paralegal.
Approximately what dates did you serve in the attorney advisor position?
From 2013 until August of 2021.
All right, Ms. Quimo, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Before I do proceed, should I call you Mrs. Parham or Letitia like I used to? Or I'm not sure if there are rules about such things before the board.
I'm open.
There are no specific requirements, Ms. Quimo. Generally, we're more formal than less formal, so perhaps Ms. Parham might be more typical.
Okay, so I'm going to call you Miss it's just going to be a little difficult because I used to call you Letitia. But Ms. Parham, you say that you worked at the SBA from 2013 to 2021 as an attorney advisor. You were my team lead. I would like to ask you to confirm that you were a team lead before you became a supervisor, right?
Yes, I was a team lead before I became a supervisor, attorney advisor.
Okay.
I've rotated in team lead.
Okay. When did you start working as a team lead?
My first experience as a team lead, I believe it was in 2013.
So when you started working at the PDC?
I started working at the PDC. I was hired by the agency in August of 2012.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so you started. When did you become an attorney advisor? In 2013. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's when you started also working as a team lead. So from time to time.
Correct.
How many assignments roughly do you believe that you served as a team lead? First of all, did you have any breaks of employment between 2013 to 2020 at the agency?
Yes, I did. I separated from the agency November 2019 and returned March. There was a 3-month separation.
Okay.
There have been no other separations.
Would it be okay for me to ask whether you it was voluntary? Whether did you leave the agency or were you let go?
My appointment expired.
And what was your appointment? So you worked from 2013 to 2019. What was your grade level when you started in 2013?
I believe I was a GS9.
And before you became a supervisor last year, what was your grade level?
GS12.
I'm sorry, okay. Okay, and when you were hired by the agency as a DS9, were you hired as a temporary employee?
Yes.
So, were you hired for a specific disaster or for? Do you have a term? Did you have like a contract like with an end date or something like that, and then you just got renewed?
Yes.
Okay. And when you went back to work at the agency in 2021, I mean in 2019 after a brief separation, did they call you or did you apply for a job?
I applied for the job.
How did you get notice about the job?
I'm sorry?
How were you notified that there was an opening in March 2019?
I routinely visited the USA Jobs website.
And when you were, we hired in March 2019, were you also temporary, or did you have a contract, like were you hired for a specific disaster?
So it was March of 2020 that I went back.
Oh yes, I'm sorry, March 2020. I'm so sorry. Yes.
Can you repeat the question also, please?
Mm-hmm. Did you have, were you hired as a temporary employee? Did you have a contract for that?
I was a temporary employee, yes.
So you were hired for the COVID, were you hired for the COVID-19 disaster?
I believe so.
So when you started working back at the agency in March 2020, I believe you became my supervisor around trying to locate that document. Sometime around late April to early June 2019. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
I became your team lead in June of 2020.
Thank you very much for clarifying that.
When you said June of 2020?
Yes, 2020.
Okay. And Ms. Heiser, I think it's something from your computer. I'm picking up some chimes or chirps of some sort. If you could mute yourself when you're not speaking, please.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Parham, when you became my team lead in June 2020, do you remember whether that assignment lasted for, you were my team lead for at least 3 weeks, right? For a number of weeks?
2 to 3 weeks, yes.
During those 3 to 2 weeks, that 2 to 3 weeks that you were my team lead, did you notice any performance issues on my part?
No, I did not.
How would you have, did you have a chance to evaluate or comment on my work performance?
Yes, I did.
Who did you make that comment to?
I didn't make any comment, but I did evaluate your work, and I thought you did a really good job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So you evaluated my work. Do you remember when, did you evaluate my work right when the team lead, when the assignment ended, or did you evaluate my work throughout the assignment?
Throughout the assignment.
Okay. And what did you base your evaluation on?
And the evaluation was based upon production primarily.
Okay. What other criteria, please?
The criteria.
What other criteria did you look at when you were evaluating my work, please?
At the time, we were working in a loan processing function. And I believe it was the number of files that were completed.
Did you talk to any supervisor about my work performance when I was under your leadership?
Not in particular.
Okay. So you never submitted any, besides the evaluation based on my production, so you never commented on my work besides that?
Yes, I provided you with a recommendation, I believe, during that time for another opportunity. And once more after that, I provided you with a recommendation as well.
Yes, thank you very much for doing that. I believe you are mentioning the recommendation because I was seeking a temporary short-term assignment with another SBA office in Washington, D.C. I remember that I was really excited about that, but then it didn't work out. So, but thank you so much.
Ms. Cuomo is testifying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Ms. Cuomo, That's all right, Ms. Quimo. I know sometimes it's hard. It's easy to lapse into a conversation, but just remember to just direct questions to the witness.
Okay.
That it's not your opportunity
Yes.
to testify. Excuse me. All right, you can.
Thank you, Judge. So during that time you were my supervisor, Disbursement, when the team was assigned to perform its duties in the loan processing department, can you speak a little bit about what our duties consisted of? Very briefly, just a brief summary.
Loan officers generally review eligibility to ensure that program requirements are met.
Okay, thank you. And did those job duties include contacting applicants by email and phone?
Yes.
Okay. Did those job duties include recommending files for approval or denial?
For loan officers, yes.
During that time, were we given a notice of some rule changes regarding eligibility that will affect immigrants, or that will affect loan applications? Yes, businesses that were partly owned by citizens, U.S. citizens, and non-qualifying immigrants.
I don't recall that.
You don't recall that rule change?
No, I don't recall any rule change in that regard.
It looks like you've frozen.
I'm not frozen.
Okay, I'm sorry. It might have been me. Did you hear me? Should I repeat my question?
No, I could hear you fine. I heard just your question about the rule change and her answer that she did not recall that rule change. And then I think we were waiting for your next question. Oh, I think Ms. Quimo may be frozen. Let's give it a second and see if she resumes. All right, let's go off the record.
Okay.
We are off the record at 12:53 p.m. We are back on the record at 12:55 p.m.
All right, we're moving forward, hoping that our technology stays strong. So again, Ms. Quimo, the last question I heard was a question about whether Ms. Parham recalled a rule change that affected businesses that are partly owned by non-qualifying immigrants. Ms. Parham answered that she didn't recall that rule change, and we were waiting for your next question.
Yes, Judge, thank you very much. Ms. Parham, I don't see you. Okay, I see you now. My next question was, do you recall what rules we apply for eligibility for those EIDL loans?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Yes, what rules were we applying for eligibility regarding files that were partly owned by different business owners. When looking at, say, citizenship, migration, or any other eligibility, do you recall what rules we were applying?
Any rules that we apply in that regard were out of the SOP, SOP 5039. Specifically, I don't recall that any rules were out of the SOP 5039, and that is the most recent SOP.
Okay. Were your duties as a team lead to transfer directives from supervisors or managers to the people in your team?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Yes. What role were you playing as far as directives, meaning for the people in your team? Where did you get your directives from? Where did they get the directives from?
The directives came from a supervisor. A team lead is not a supervisor. We are an intermediary.
Okay. So would it be right to say that any directives that you receive from supervisors, you send them to us?
Yes.
Doing that. Okay. Do you recall any conversation that you've had with me where I told you I was going to do something that you did not agree with?
No, I do not.
Okay. Based on your experience as a team lead and your knowledge on how management works, how is people's work evaluated by management as a whole?
By management
Yes, basically, how supervisors like you now are evaluating the work of the people beneath that are under your leadership, or specifically attorney department. What do you base your evaluations on as a supervisor now?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled. You can answer, Ms. Parham.
Well, I can't speak for any other supervisor, and I am fairly new to this role, but I believe that entire performance, attendance, there are multiple things that are taken into consideration when evaluating employee for opportunities, for appointment extensions. There are a number of different things that a supervisor would take into consideration.
Would you name some of those things, please?
Time and attendance. That would be something that we would take into consideration when evaluating the performance of an employee. Production. Those are a couple of things.
Now, do you remember, have you evaluated anybody's work since you become a supervisor?
Yes, I have.
How many files or how many people's work have you evaluated roughly? You don't have to give an exact number.
I would say approximately 60.
Okay. What other criteria did you use to evaluate those also people? Besides time and attendance, I believe you said production?
Yes.
What other criteria did you use?
Materials. We look at written materials, customer service. For the most part, those are the things that we are looking at.
Okay. When you say written materials, what do you mean?
Communications externally, internally. There may be documents that are or things that are prepared to assist the team. It may be spreadsheets. It may be PowerPoints. There's a number of items that would be considered as written materials.
And what about customer service?
The same thing. Customer service, same thing. A lot of it is, it does overlap a little bit. Maybe may receive just as an example, an email from a disaster survivor, thanking, for example, you. That may be something that you would elevate to your team lead or your supervisor, just to demonstrate your level of customer service.
And how did you access as far as communication, external communications for written materials? What would they consist of?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled. You can answer the question, but Ms. Quimo, it was a little bit confusingly framed for me, so I don't know if you want to reframe that question.
Yes, Judge. When you say that people are evaluated based on their written materials, including communications, external and internal communications, I'm trying to figure out what exactly will constitute an external communication for a written material. Would that be emails exchanged with applicants?
Yes.
And for internal communications, would that be under written materials? Would that be MS Teams messages and emails between team members or with other people at the SBA?
Wouldn't say MS Teams chat, but I would say email, maybe something.
Okay. MS Teams at all reviewed by anybody?
No.
Are there access? Do you have access to anybody's MS Team chat communications as a supervisor?
No, I do not.
Do you have any indication as to whether that was a possibility back in 2020 or earlier?
No, I do not.
Okay. As far as customer service, do you have evaluation of people's customer service performance? Do you have access to the phone records or their phone calls, the actual phone calls with the customers?
No, I do not.
So basically, for customer service, it's written work only.
It's primarily written work.
Okay. What other things will qualify that are not written work qualify as customer service material?
Customer service, it could be internal or external. You can provide internal or external customer service. External being your interaction with disaster survivors. Internal, your interaction with your team members, team leads, and supervisors. In some cases, you may go, a team member may go above and beyond the call of duty to prepare documents or things or flow charts to make some of the information a little bit easier, and that would lend to probably a higher rating in customer service because you're assisting the agency, which is also a customer. So that's
okay. And when you access anybody that is under your supervision as a supervisory attorney right now, do you have access to all the emails at the SBA that are in their file, in the email account, or do you only have access to the emails sent and received during your specific time as their supervisor?
I do not have access at all.
You don't have access at all to any emails, anybody that is under your leadership?
No, I do not.
Do you have any reason to believe that it was different early on in 2020?
No, I don't.
Okay. So basically when you say emails, you mean emails that are sent to you as a supervisor. So how do you evaluate email communications with customers if you don't have access to those emails?
They are elevated. They are sent up. The team member would forward or attach it to their performance evaluation to show as proof. But it is something that a team member would submit, or it is something that a team member would copy their supervisor on, or their team. That is the way that a supervisor or team lead would have access if they were included on the email or if it was sent to them.
Okay, I see. Okay. And okay. I believe that's actually, sorry, I have one document I wanted to in document number 10, page 83.
Which board tab would that be?
Yes, I think that's number 10. Is that not? Let me see. I'm sorry. Let me scroll up. Do you have the document number 10 tab? I think tab number 10 open up.
Is it board tab 10?
Yes, I think that's one. Yes.
What page on board tab 10?
Let's start at 83. We're going to go down.
Sorry, which page?
Page 83.
Team meeting notes for 10/2020?
Yes, we're going to start there. We're going to go down a little bit. When you were a team lead, did you receive notifications about absences? Did people? I know I did. Actually, can you scroll down to 84 also? I believe you are CC'd in that email.
I'm sorry, Ms. Quimo.
Yes.
Is your question to her whether she received notifications from her team members of their absences?
Yes, Judge. I was waiting for her to open the document and get to that page, and I asked her, yes, whether she received notification about her team members' absences.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. And after you received notifications from your from team members about absences, what was the procedure that you followed?
Well, it depends upon the type of absence that it is.
What about sick leave?
sick leave, I elevated those requests or notifications to a supervisor.
And what about just general somebody running late, for example?
Sorry, somebody what?
Running late. Running late.
Running late?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. If someone is running late, I would notify a supervisor.
Are there any notifications where you did not elevate those to a supervisor?
No.
Okay. So you have to elevate everything to a supervisor.
If someone is running late or absent, yes.
And did you have any interest as a team lead to know whether somebody was running late or whether they were absent?
Yes.
Meaning, was it helpful to know? Yes?
Yes.
Why?
Because I need to ensure adequate coverage on my team.
Okay. And if you scroll down to page 88,
yes.
On that day, that's a notification that I was running late and that I will be able to get in by 6:45. Can you confirm that's correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember forwarding that notification or mentioning it to any supervisor?
No, it wasn't a concern because we had until 9 o'clock your local time to log in. Our start time, I believe, was 6 to 9, and so it wasn't a concern. Okay. You were still within your start time, so there was no worry there.
Okay. But if I had not shown up by 9, would you have had to notify the supervisor?
Yes.
And for an absence like the one that I just pulled up regarding the differences where I couldn't log in and things like that, would you have been, how would I say that, worried about whether that will affect whether my request, say for annual leave, will be denied based on the information that you had, based on the text messages that I sent you?
Sorry, can you repeat that again, please?
Yes, I'm sorry. So those text messages where I was specifically saying that I had issues connecting and that I was running late. And that day you said that I was able to get in before the end of my start time, before the end of my time period, something like that. My question is whether if I had actually been, if I had got into work after 9 o'clock, would you have been, because of those issues, would you have been concerned as to whether my annual leave request would be denied?
No, I wouldn't have been concerned about it. It was out of my purview and that type of decisions.
Mm-hmm. But now, as an attorney, would such absences would you approve those absences for annual leave after the fact?
I don't think that it would have weighed on that decision. Annual leave is generally granted fairly liberally when we are not on leave restriction. Right now we're on leave restriction, and I believe at the time we were on leave restriction as well.
Okay.
It wouldn't have weighed on whether or not to approve annual leave. Annual leave would have been approved or disapproved depending upon coverage. I would say coverage for the team, and also the availability of leave, because if a person doesn't have leave available, then of course it's going to be denied. But if having computer issues or what have you prior to your start time, it wouldn't have any effect on that.
Okay. Thank you very much. And when you say leave restrictions, do you mean that there are times when there are leave restrictions are strict? When leave requests are stricter than other times? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
When would that be, for example?
During high disaster activity, a higher workload than normal.
And when there are leave restrictions are strictly enforced, how does management let people know?
Sorry, how does management let people know?
Yes, whether that there's a change in the way that annual leave requests are being handled.
When everyone was hired on specifically for this pandemic, everyone that was hired on was new in advance, and the agency is currently on leave restrictions. So if anyone onboarded, then they were told at that time, and it was confirmed whether or not they could work the hours.
Okay.
That was a concern.
Okay. So when you say everybody was on notice that there were leave restrictions, do you mean that? Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by that?
It's not guaranteed to be approved. Annual leave is not guaranteed to be approved.
And how were people notified about that? About the leave restriction?
They were notified when they were hired on to take the position.
How were they notified?
I believe it was during the onboarding interview, because that's a question that's asked, is whether or not they can work the hours, and they're advised at that time verbally.
Okay. All right. Does that mean that all annual leave requests were denied during that time?
No.
What does that mean then?
It means it's on a case-by-case basis.
And what will weigh into someone's favor and not weigh into someone's favor?
I think it would be fact sensitive. Each individual is different. Probably, I would say one of the most important things is whether or not the leave is available. It also depends upon what team or what group they're working in. May also something else that we factor into is the production of the team. There are a number of. It is a fact sensitive and individual question for each team member. So, but leave is not guaranteed. Approval of annual leave is not guaranteed.
When you say approval of annual leave is not guaranteed, did you mean pre-incident approval, meaning that somebody are requesting annual leave for the future, or do you mean after the fact request? For example, somebody running late for 5 minutes.
It could go both ways.
It could go both ways. When did the leave restrictions get lifted during this pandemic?
They have not lifted.
Oh, they have not lifted, so they're still in place.
Yes.
Okay. So, how long are people hired for the EIDL loans working? How many hours are they working right now?
Objection, relevant.
Yeah, sustained.
If I can explain, Judge, I just wanted to know because Mrs. Parham said that the leave restrictions were still in place. I want to know whether Actually, I think you just asked that question. Mrs. Parham, are the leave restrictions in place when people are working mandatory overtime?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the reason why leave restrictions are in place, or are there times when people are working overtime, but then there is no leave restriction?
Leave restriction is currently in place because of the current level of disaster activity in working.
Does that mean that whenever, is that as a supervisor or as somebody that has worked at SBA for so long, do you know whether leave restrictions are lifted or are relaxed whenever overtime ceases, or is there a correlation between mandatory overtime and leave restrictions?
Ms. Quimo, yep, sustained. I'm going to interject just that, Ms. Quimo, I think we're going beyond the scope of the issues in this appeal. So if we could please just refocus back on the issues here more directly.
Okay. Mrs. Parham, how many people have you supervised since you became a supervisor?
Only 60.
Oh, 60 people. And that is still since August 2021, right?
Yes.
Okay. Of all those people during that time, has anybody been late to work?
Objection, relevance.
Yeah, sustained. So, Ms. Quimo, I think Ms. Parham's experience as her being a supervisor more recently, I don't think that bears on the questions at issue in your appeal, since she wasn't your supervisor back in the events that we're addressing now. So if we could focus on what it is that she did as your team lead, I think that's where her testimony is going to be most relevant.
Okay, thank you, Judge. I think I'm going to let the agency do its own own questioning now.
Okay, I just had a couple of questions before I turn it over to Ms. Heiser. I wanted to clarify, Ms. Parham, when you were the appellant's team lead, did you have access to her email communications with loan applicants?
No, I did not.
And did you have access to her telephone calls with applicants when you were her team lead?
No, I did not.
Okay, all right, Ms. Heiser.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Parham, can you briefly explain what the job duties of a team lead are?
Sure. Depending upon the department, an area that you're working in, a team lead, generally, they act as an intermediary between the supervisor and the team members. Basic information, forward instructions and directions, and point them in the right direction. We also assist with collecting time.
And prior to Ms. Quimo becoming a part of your team in, I believe, June 2020 approximately, did you ever know her or work with her before she became a team member?
No.
And how long have you been a team lead approximately?
Off and on since 2013. We routinely rotate in and out of the position of team lead, primarily for experience. We rotate different departments. I may be a team lead in one department, and then I may join another team in another department.
And is there a typical number of people who are on your team, or does it fluctuate?
It fluctuates.
What's the approximate fluctuation of people who are can be on a team?
It depends upon the department. But generally, I would say that average over the past probably few years, on average, the average team lead has about 20 team members.
When Ms. Quimo was on your team, do you remember approximately how many team members you had?
The team members in the month of June fluctuated. We were doing team shuffles and we were hiring up. So the month of June is kind of an anomaly. I had between 30 and 120 people on my team, including sub-teams. And then they were transferred to various departments. And I believe I ended up with between 20 to 30 individuals. And then again, we rotate and we shuffle routinely about three times a year, even when we're not busy. Then it went down to about 20 to 30.
Is it unusual for attorneys who are not team leads to move around between different teams or groups or departments?
Absolutely.
I was going to object that question because I don't see how it's relevant. It's how it touches on the team lead's role.
Okay. Overruled. You can answer, Ms. Parham.
Yes. We routinely rotate at the PDC. It increases the program knowledge of all the employees across the board so that we can work in all the various departments. Attorneys and paralegals routinely do the same job. Attorneys, there's some jobs that are reserved only for attorneys because it takes a license to do those things.
And I know you mentioned before that team leads are not supervisors. Do team leads have any sort of supervisory authority?
No.
Are team leads responsible in any way for approving or disapproving leave?
No.
Can team leads make disciplinary decisions?
No.
Can team leads make staffing or hiring and firing decisions?
No. They're not privy to any of that.
And do you know if Ms. Quimo was happy with her role as an attorney at SBI?
I thought she was.
And you mentioned that you served as a reference for her approximately twice, is that right?
I did.
Did you give her a positive reference or negative or neutral?
They were very positive.
In the spring and summer 2020 timeframe, can you describe what the workload was at ODA?
We were incredibly, and we still are, incredibly busy. Incredibly busy. The busiest that I've seen since I started with the agency.
And why was it so busy?
Due to the number of loans coming in with the pandemic, the startup of a new operating system, the rapid loan system. We were very busy during that time for those reasons. The number of loans.
And would that include the EIDL loans too?
Yes. All of the EIDL loans. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
All of the EIDL loans are housed in the rapid loan processing system. Our regular disaster loans are housed in DCMS 2.0, that operating system.
And can you just briefly explain what a EIDL loan is?
It is a business loan to offset lost profits. That's the easiest way to describe it. A loan to a business that lost profits due to a disaster.
Do you know approximately how many EIDL loan requests have been received in the spring or summer 2020 timeframe?
I do not, but I would guess a few million to a billion.
And in that time frame, spring and summer 2020, approximately how many hours on average were attorneys or other members of your team generally working?
Minimum 12. At times we were working 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And there was a time where we were working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are currently on a 6-day week, 10-hour a day schedule still.
And in the summer of 2020 timeframe, do you know if the agency was still undergoing any sort of surge hiring?
Yes.
And was that just based on the immense workload?
Yes.
Actually, I was going to object to that question because as a team lead, I don't know whether Mrs. Parham knew about the reasons for management decisions regarding hiring.
Okay. Well, she's already answered, Ms. Quimo, so it's part of the record. So we'll move on to the next question.
Thank you.
Ms. Parham, in your experience in the spring and summer of 2020, was there a lot of downtime for employees?
No.
And I know you testified that you don't remember there being a change to EIDL loan eligibility requirements for the citizenship component. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you remember if when there were other EIDL loan eligibility changes, whether those changes were retroactive or prospective?
I don't believe that I don't remember anything in particular, but it's highly unlikely that something would be retroactive if there was a change.
Okay. And are you aware of any requirement that the SBA has to notify business owners or applicants who were previously denied loans about any changes to eligibility requirements?
No.
Do you remember if any employees asked you about any questions about ownership percentages?
I don't recall.
Do you recall Ms. Quimo ever asking you any questions about EIDL loans?
I'm sure that she did ask questions, but I don't remember any specific question that she asked.
Is it unusual for team members to ask questions?
I'm sorry, was it unusual?
Yes.
It's not unusual. It's encouraged.
And did Did Ms. Quimo ever tell you that she believed that the agency was acting improperly or violating laws, rules, or regulations or policies?
No.
Did Ms. Quimo ever tell you that she believed that the agency was acting improperly in any manner?
No.
And when a team member comes to you about a question, do you typically report that question to management?
No. They would be overwhelmed.
You mentioned that Ms. Quimo was on your team for approximately 3 weeks. Do you know why she left your team?
No.
Did you have any role or involvement in the decision to move Ms. Quimo off of your team?
No.
At the approximate time that Ms. Quimo was moved to a different group or department, were others moved from your team as well?
Yes.
Do you remember how many people approximately?
I ended up with about 30 out of 120, and they rotated off at different times, and I'm not sure where any particular person went, and I didn't know that Ms. Queen was separated from the agency either.
At the time that Ms. Quimo left your team, did other attorneys leave your team as well?
Yes.
Do you remember approximately how many of those, I guess it was about 90 people who moved, how many of those were attorneys?
No, I don't. It was even across. I had attorneys and paralegals on my team doing the same function, and so I'm not sure how many were attorneys or paralegals that left. I'm not sure.
And was there anything unusual about Ms. Quimo being moved at the time?
No.
Are you aware of any leave or tardiness issues that Ms. Quimo had?
No.
Are you aware of any employees being charged with AWOL?
Ms. Quimo? No.
Just any in general?
Yes.
Were there any employees who were on your team that were charged with AWOL in the spring or summer 2020 timeframe?
No.
Since you've become a supervisor, have you charged any employees with being AWOL?
Yes.
Are you aware of Ms. Quimo raising any concerns about SBA's use of a specific IRS form?
No.
Do you know why Ms. Quimo left the agency?
No. I didn't even know she left.
Are you aware of any retaliation against Ms. Quimo?
No.
Did you retaliate against Ms. Quimo?
No.
As a team lead, were you supportive of Ms. Quimo?
Very.
And in your experience, are team leads and supervisors generally supportive of their team or subordinates?
Yes.
And if a team member or an employee came to you with an allegation that the agency was engaged in some sort of wrongdoing or something illegal, is that something that you would remember?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, I don't have any more questions.
Okay, I have one question for you before we go back to Ms. Quimo to see if she has redirect. Ms. Parham, when an applicant for an EIDL loan has been denied, and then they come back and they reapply for an EIDL loan, is the previous denial a basis for denying the loan a second time?
Not necessarily. It could be, depending upon what the original denial was for. A loan officer will look at the original denial. But again, it would be fact sensitive. Each business and situation is different, and each denial is different. But it wouldn't be
All right,
denied.
thank you. All right, Ms. Quimo, do you have? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Parham. Did you have something else?
No, I was just clarifying my answer. If it was unclear.
Oh, please finish.
All right. It wouldn't be a basis for denial, but would it be looked at? They're going to look at all prior decisions on a loan. They will look at it, but it wouldn't be a basis, a reason for a denial. That's because it was denied.
Okay. All right, Ms. Quimo.
Thank you, Judge. Regarding the judge's question, I would like to ask a follow-up question. So, is your answer based on your general knowledge on how EIDL loans work, the denial process? Or is it based on the SOP or anything like that, or is it based on your understanding of the rules and regulations at the ODSEE?
It's based on the SOP. It's written in the SOP that a loan officer has to look at all prior applications. That's something that they have to look at. A loan officer would look at it.
Okay. So, for instance, if an applicant had applied, and first of all, in the RAPID system, are there ways to identify the reason why it's being denied?
Yes.
So if an applicant has been denied for a specific reason, say eligibility, we applied within a short time, say a month or a few weeks, after the rules had changed, would the previous, and when that applicant under the new rules met the criteria for eligibility, would the previous denial, should the previous denial still weigh in the new in the outcome of the second application?
Objection, relevance, and assumes facts, not an evidence.
Overruled. You can answer, Ms. Park.
Reconsideration is fact sensitive. A loan officer is charged with looking at the previous application and any denial, and so a loan officer would look at that. If that question is.
Okay. So I was actually talking about a new application in somebody that had been denied going through the reconsideration process, being denied through the reconsideration process, and submitting a whole new application. Would that change anything? If they were able to meet all of the criteria, meaning will the new application be accepted, or should the new application be accepted?
It's fact sensitive. A loan officer is going to be charged with looking at any resubmission or any additional documentation, as well as any previous documentation. A loan officer would have to look at the entire record. And again, it is fact sensitive on in terms of what their determination would be.
Okay. Are you handling reconsideration at the PDC office?
Sorry?
Are you handling reconsideration at reconsideration? No, not you specifically, but the PDC office.
Yes, there is a reconsideration team currently at the PDC.
Okay. Was that reconsideration team in place in 2020 while I was under your leadership in 2020, or was a team at the PDC doing reconciliation? Was there a team at the PDC doing reconciliation in 2020?
Yes, there was. It was slow, but there was a team in place.
So would you say that somebody that worked, that did a loan with you or work as a loan with you had any interest in knowing what was going on during reconsideration?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes. Will somebody working as a loan officer, say in loan processing, have any interest, have any reason, valid reason for knowing the process that is applied in reconsideration or the criteria applied in reconsideration?
Yes, if they're on the reconsideration team, they would need to know what the process is.
No, if they are only a loan officer doing first or second level review, do they have any interest in knowing what is going on at the reconsideration stage?
Objection, relevance.
You can answer, Ms. Parham. Overruled.
Generally, no. The only way they would have a disaster survivor followed up with them, and then just as to provide customer service, they might provide them with an update. So that's the only way just generally would arise.
Okay, so you would discourage anybody that worked as a loan from trying to find out what happened in reconsideration.
Objection, mischaracterizes prior testimony.
Sustained.
Okay. Would you as a supervisor right now? Oh, I'm not supposed to ask questions about being a supervisor, but would you have found upon my work performance, say, under your leadership as a team lead, if you knew that I had sought information for loan reconsideration, EIDL loan reconsideration, basically I was trying to find out what was going on in that process. Would that have affected the way you rated my work?
No.
I have a few more questions. So you said earlier that rotating among teams increases the program knowledge of team members. Are you saying that because they rotated among teams, they acquired new knowledge and that was helpful to the agency?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yes. You said earlier that by rotating among teams, the program knowledge of team members, it was a good thing because the program knowledge of team members increased. And my question is, did you mean that it was a good thing because on different teams there were there were new facts or new processes that team members could learn of, new skills they could acquire, and that was beneficial to the agency? Is that what you mean? Or can you explain what you mean by saying that rotating among team members is a good thing?
Well, it's a great thing to increase program knowledge to see how the entire program works, so that you can work in various departments and provide additional customer service internally and externally to borrowers, and increase program knowledge across the board. It serves both the disaster as well as the agency, because you're not having to retrain, in a new area, and for the disaster survivors, it helps to provide additional insight into what's going on with their particular loan and what stage it is in.
Okay, And did you have, of the people that are right now on the consideration team at the PDC, do you know if anybody was previously, say, a loan officer?
Objection, relevance.
Yeah, why is that relevant, Ms. Quimo?
Okay. Okay, you testified earlier that you don't have any supervisory authority, but you also said that you perform performance evaluations. Am I correct?
Objection, it's characterized as prior testimony.
I think she's asking to clarify the testimony, so I'm going to allow the question. And Ms. Parham, you can clarify your previous testimony if you would, please.
Thank you. At the time in 2020, when I was your team lead, I did not have any supervisory role. I didn't provide an official evaluation of your work as a supervisor in my capacity now. That evaluation would be more in depth than the role of a team lead. But at the time, as a team lead, I was not acting in a supervisory role, and so my evaluation was limited.
Okay, but you did say that you evaluated my performance, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know of any? Do you know if do team members evaluate each other's work performance?
Team members, no.
Okay. So would you concur? I think that's the word. That by you evaluating my work performance, you were functioning in some sort of supervisory authority or supervisory role. Even though you were not a supervisor, you had some type of supervisory, delegated supervisory authority. Is that correct?
No, I had no supervisory authority. I had no.
Okay. I'm going to ask.
Can I jump in real quick, Ms. Quimo, if I could? Ms. Farm, if you could just clarify for me, when you say you evaluated Ms. Quimo's performance, was that part of an official performance evaluation process, or was that an informal evaluation of her performance?
An informal evaluation of her performance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Judge. And when you informally evaluated my work performance, who did you give that feedback to, or was it just for your own records?
It was for my own records.
Okay. So as a team lead, you had no say whatsoever on your team lead's performance, and you did not discuss any of your team lead's performance with any supervisor or manager or anyone like that.
If I had an issue, if I saw an issue, then I would bring it up. I had no problems with your performance. I thought you did an excellent job, and that's why I provided the recommendations for you.
Okay. So even though you would perform an informal evaluation, it could have turned into something more formal, basically. If you saw an issue, then you would have met to a supervisor.
I would have elevated it to if I had an issue with the performance of one of my team members of the team lead, I would elevate it to supervisor, and they would make whatever determination or evaluation that they make.
Okay, thank you. And how long would you say that we work on the file as loan officers? How long approximately did we spend on a file when I was under your leadership as a team lead in 2020? Can you give me a range of time we could spend on the file?
Well, it's difficult to say because every every file is different. They're fact sensitive. Not every business is the same. The organization of the company. So we couldn't put a specific time for each for you to review each file. So that I can't answer that question.
I'm going to ask you a more specific question. Would you agree that there were some files where we could spend as little as 15 minutes, and some files where we had to contact the applicants again and again, and we could spend days on it waiting for answers and waiting for documents?
Yes.
Objection, relevance.
She's answered, Ms. Heiser, so it's part of the record. And Ms. Klima, you can ask your next question.
I believe you said that we rotated among teams quite a bit. And I believe you said that you were assigned to different teams in 2020, many different teams in 2020. Do you have a number? Do you remember approximately how many teams you were assigned to in 2020 from the time you were hired? I believe you said in March to say the end of the year.
For myself personally?
Yes, just for you.
Four to five.
4 to 5.
In various departments.
Okay, so you must have stayed on some teams for months then.
Correct.
Okay. Were you when you moved teams, or when you saw, I believe that you if you had any contact with team leads or other teams, did you know of any breaks between any breaks in between team assignments, meaning that not even team assignments, but work on a new team, meaning that when a team will end, would there sometimes be a break, meaning a time when the team members won't have access to work or things like that for some time until they do?
No, there was plenty of work.
There was. Okay. So you did not notice or you did not experience any break at all. So whenever the work ended on Monday, you and anybody else you knew started work on the next team the same day. Is that what you're saying?
And that's correct. And in some cases, you perform more than one role at the same time. That's been
okay. And has that been your experience as a team lead or as a team member?
Both.
Both. Okay. So since you started working at the SBA as an attorney in 2013, and I assume that you rotated, that you've moved teams a lot. It is your testimony that there hasn't been significant any break, basically in between teams. You just move from team to team and work starts right away.
Correct.
Okay. How have you had the experience of having say systems issues or access to new files or that, or has it been pretty quick on everything?
Objection, relevance.
I'm trying. Why is that relevant, Ms. Kumo?
Yes, I'm trying to establish the fact that sometimes, even though you were told that you were assigned to a new team, that the work itself will not start right away because sometimes you did not have access to this.
Okay. I think we're getting fairly far afield from the issues that are being raised in this appeal, Ms. Climo. Okay. So I think we should move on to the next question, and that objection is sustained.
Okay. All right. Mrs. Powell, you said that you did not you did not remember anything I told you about anything I may have asked you about rule changes for EIDL loans applicants, but you also said that that the agency wasn't acting improperly. That I never told you that the agency was acting improperly or breaking the law. How could you be so sure that I never told you something like that, or I never inferred something like that? If you don't remember anything about loan eligibility or changes in eligibility in our conversations.
I would absolutely remember something related to the agency breaking the law or doing thing improper. I'm very conservative regarding it. It is something that I would have elevated if that came to my attention. But I don't recall any situation that you brought to. I don't recall any situation or concern that you brought to me regarding a breaking of a law or doing something improper.
Okay. If I had told you that I was going to go against general guidelines and contact an applicant and notify an applicant of any internal rule that was not disclosed specifically to those applicants by the agency itself. Would that be something that you could potentially elevate to supervisors?
Objection, outside the scope of my examination.
Well, I was just confused by the question, Ms. Quimo. I don't know if you could rephrase what you're asking, and then I can make a decision on that objection.
Sure. Thank you, Judge. Mrs. Powell, if I critiqued any of the agency's rules or any of the agency's processes as far as loan processing, for instance, would that, if I openly criticize their processes, would that be something that would raise a red flag to you?
No.
So if I told you, for instance, that I will contact an applicant and notify them of something that the agency was doing, that the agency had not taken the initiative of notifying applicants in general, and I told you specifically that I would that be something that you will that will raise a red flag to you, or the necessity maybe to mention it to management or supervisor as a team lead?
It depends upon what it was.
Okay.
I'm going to interject for just a moment. Ms. Barham, do you remember Ms. Quimo ever critiquing any of the agency's rules or loan processes to you?
Not specifically. We all have suggestions, or we think things could be done differently. That's not a real concern. That's not something that I would bring to my supervisor or concern myself with, other than to calm my team member down, or something like that. But I don't recall anything specific that Ms. Quimo brought to me, outside of anything, a normal thing regarding hours, or we're working a lot of hours or something like that. And even then, I don't even recall any specific objection or concern regarding hours.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Quimo.
Thank you, Judge. You also testified earlier that you didn't see anything unusual about me being assigned to another team, maybe me leaving your team. But before that, I believe you also said that you did not have any supervisory authority or anything like that. Would you have been in a position to notice anything unusual about management decision to move me from one team to another, or one assignment to another?
No, I wasn't aware. I had absolutely no say. A lot of times, and even to this day, team leads they find out a day or two after a decision or determination is made. Staff in another department, some of the decisions are made the last minute by upper management, and that's outside of the team lead's purview or control. And so a lot of times we were notified after the fact that someone is moving, and that's why a lot of times the job functions overlap until one portfolio is cleared out, portfolio is brought in. And there are times a team member may be working, in two different departments at the same time for a short time, and there was nothing unusual regarding your transfer to another team. Other people were transferred at the same time. I didn't notice anything different, and I think same situation. I think I was notified after the fact that you were being transferred.
Okay.
You and
Thank you, Mr. Power. And since you'll be working at the SBA as a team lead, during the time you worked as a SBA as a team lead and now as a trust supervisor, but during those years, I think 7 years or so, give or take, is it your testimony that team leads?
All right, Ms. Quimo appears to have frozen.
Oh, sorry. Am I back?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. During the years that you work as a team lead, is your testimony that team leads don't have, because of your experience as a team lead, is it your testimony that team leads don't have any input or any decision making authority in people moving from one team to another?
No, they do not.
You also say that you charge at least one person with AWOL since you became a supervisor. I'm not sure if that's okay for me to ask, but since you did say that, can I ask how many people did you charge, or how many AWOLs did you charge, and for how many, for what reasons and what time frame? Meaning the absences were there for 1 hour, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days.
One person, and it was no call, no show.
No call, no show, does that mean for a whole day?
Yes.
Were you, during the time you were my team lead in 2020, did you have anyone on the team that you were not supportive of, meaning that whose work performance kind of was questionable, or caused you to have a second look at what they were doing?
Objection, Rob.
Yeah, why is that relevant, Ms. Quimo?
I would like to evaluate I would like to, how would I say, compare what Mrs. Parham said about my work performance to the work performance of other people on the team. Just because I believe that when she was speaking earlier, the issue came up as to whether team leads are generally supportive of everybody on their team. So I'm trying to point out that even though it's general, it's not always the case.
All right, I'm going to sustain the objection. I think that's, again, getting, off track from the issues we're here to decide today. So
Okay.
you can move on to your next question, Ms. Climo.
Okay, Judge. I'm not sure if this question is okay, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Mrs. Parham, how would you rank my work performance while on the team? I know you already said that you in my work and it was great, but I'm asking you, how would you rank it if you had to compare it to other people on your team at that time?
Objection, relevance. Ms. Climo's performance isn't an issue in this case.
Yep, sustained.
Judge, I don't know if it's okay for me to say that, but I believe my work performance comes up as an issue when I'm being assigned to certain teams, like data entry, while there are other opportunities. But that's all. Those are all the questions that I had. So I don't have any more, and I want to thank Mrs. Parham for being available to testify to me. I don't know.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's more.
Okay, there may be more from the agency. So Ms. Heiser, was there any redirect or recross from the agency?
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Parham, we do appreciate your testimony here this afternoon. Please don't discuss your testimony with anyone who is not now present until this hearing is concluded, which will be sometime tomorrow. But you are released, so you may disconnect from the meeting.
Thank you, Judge. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Let's go off the record.
We are off the record at 2:13 p.m.